How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Dark Ride. Dark Ride from 2006, and this is part of the very first After Dark Horrorfest. This is directed by Craig Singer and stars Jamie-Lynn Sigler, Patrick Renna, and David Clayton Rogers. And this movie's about a group of college kids. They get in a van and they're heading down to spring break when they decide to spend the night in a soon-to-be reopened dark ride at an amusement park. Soon to be reopened because it's been closed for a very long time because of some murders. But unbeknownst to the teens, the guy who committed the murders has recently broke out of his asylum and returned to his old dark ride, and he's going to be wreaking some havoc there. Now, as you might be able to tell from the plot synopsis there, this is, kind of a formulaic slasher, but I feel that this falls into the category of formulaic but fun. And this is really a fun movie. I mean, there's tons of stuff we've seen before in this plot. A group of teens in a van, they even pick up a hitchhiker. Very much Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Spending the night in the dark ride, another Tobe Hooper movie. The Funhouse, very reminiscent of The Funhouse. You even get a scene where they're sitting in a circle, talking about the legend of the killer. Very much like the campfire scene from Friday the 13th, Part 2. So a lot we've seen before, and the characters are very much, the cliched, college kids that get picked off in a ton of slasher movies. And it's very much like we've seen in 80s slashers. But that being said, it works. It knows that it's a cheesy slasher movie, and it doesn't really try to be anything more than that, but it knows what it is, and it tries to have fun with what it is. And you can tell that this was made by a group of people that probably watched a ton of 80s slashers and just wanted to make another one and have fun with it. So it's not big and revolutionary. It doesn't change the game up or have a big twist that makes it the slasher that does this or that. But for what it is, it has fun, and that's why this movie kind of has a little bit of a cult following. A lot of people that saw this movie when they were a lot younger really enjoyed it, and you get a soft spot for it over the years. A few of the major pros. The killer in this movie is pretty cool. He's wearing a straitjacket that he burst out of, and all the little braces are broken. And his mask, he actually took one of the mannequins in the dark ride, whacked its face off, and is using that as his mask. So he's got a mannequin face. That's pretty cool. And all the kills in this movie, they're pretty fun. They know they're in a cheesy slasher, and they're good, gory, goofy, fun kills. For example, there's one where a character gets a machete to his face, and it cuts his head in half, and they dwell on this for probably way too long. But you see the guy going, ugh, and you see all the blood squirt out, and it takes so long to get to that final reveal shot that it's kind of a joke, just how extreme it is. And yeah, they try to have a sense of fun about them, and that really is what this movie is. It's nothing technically special, but it's good comfort food, And a lot of slasher fans, especially 80s slasher fans, they're gonna find a lot to like here. Nothing super original, but still pretty fun and cheesy. A few flaws. One, there's this prank in the movie that they spend way too much time explaining. It's like, okay, we get it, we can move on. But the bigger flaw, and that's sort of the thing with this movie, is it is what I call a third act slasher, where basically, when you're in a slasher movie, the moment that your characters know you're in a slasher movie, the plot starts to really burn hot and bright, and it goes really fast. So in turn, you kind of put off the slasher stuff till, you're ready to have the plot move that fast. And in turn, not just this movie, but a ton of other slasher movies, even a lot of the classic 80s slashers, they wait till like the third act before it really turns into a slasher movie. And then the question becomes, what do you do with that first hour? A lot of cheesy jump scares. Friday the 13th would eventually develop murder vignettes where characters that have nothing to do with the plot will wander in to get killed so that we can do something for the first hour. Here, you do get some scary things, like the prologue or like the killer breaking out. But for the most part, this movie during the first hour relies on characters, and the characters are goofy and cheesy characters, but there's enough sense of levity and comedy between them, and also they have their own little dramas, which gives them something to do. But the other big thing, the setting. And I must admit, I'm kind of a sucker for this type of setting. It's a dark ride where you sit in the car and you go through and there's all these mannequins that are going to try to scare you, and lots of little settings, lots of different figures, and breaking into a place like this, sneaking around when you're not supposed to, and seeing all this scary stuff. Yeah, okay, yeah, I must admit it's funner than it should be, right? So, yeah, you have to wait till the third act for this to really become a slasher movie, and when it gets going, it's pretty fun, but somehow, even though not much happens for that first hour, it is just teens goofing around, it's still fun, and it didn't really feel long, and it is interesting enough, especially the setting, where you can really pass the time a lot quicker than you'd think. So even though it is a third act structure, it doesn't really feel bad. So yeah, cheesy slasher fun. For those of you who like cheesy slasher fun, you should probably check this out. Without further ado, I want to dig into the plot a little more. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to take a moment and analyze the plot in more detail, so let's dive in a little deeper. Anyway, we open up with the prologue scene. The prologue scene, we get back in time. Two girls go to the dark ride before it was closed. Twin girls, and of course you get the ticket taker going, you want tickets? Round trip or one way. So you kind of get the sense of the movie's humor there, right? They go in and the braver kid is picking on the one who's not as brave and more scared when she gets pulled away by a mysterious hand. The sister's wondering where her twin went. They get to a new room and she finds that her sister is part of the scary operation scene and she's being killed by someone who is, in fact, not just a mannequin. So she's dead, then the killer sees her, and they're both gonna die now. Then you get the credits. The credits are newspaper clippings, and you get to see the story there, that the dark ride was shut down, the killer was sent to an asylum, and a bunch of time has passed. A bunch of time has passed, and people kind of forget, and they decide to reopen the dark ride, coming soon. And now, it's spring break, where we jump to our main characters. Our main characters are piling in a van, getting ready to go to New Orleans, and they're going to have fun together, but they all have little dramas about them. Your final girl type character, well, she's recently broken things off with her boyfriend, but they're still going on this trip together, and they kind of see it as one last test. If they don't get back together during this trip, then it's probably it for them. Then you have the party guy, and he recently hooked up with the final girl's best friend, and he doesn't know if it was just a one-night thing, or if he has a chance to build a relationship with her, and it's kind of one of those, are they going to get together or are they not? And then you have the nerdy guy who's big into film, and he'll constantly be referencing movies, and no one else gets it. And I do want to say with this nerdy character, he he doesn't introduce the stuff right, and he doesn't really have all the social skills, but at the same time, they're giving him nothing, you know? He'll throw out some reference, and rather than going, oh, that sounds interesting, but I don't know it, they just kind of stare at him and move on, you know? So he's not really getting it right, but they're also not giving him anything to work with, you know? So on top of that, they eventually pick up this hitchhiker girl, big into drugs, big into music, a real party girl, and all the guys, their relationships aren't nailed down at this point. They're all up in the air. So you throw her in, and it really does serve to shake up the plot. And after that, well, I guess technically it's introduced a little before, but they stop at a gas station, and in the gas station, the nerdy film student finds a flyer for the dark ride that's about to reopen. And they go, that's cool, but it's not going to open up until 3 days after we pass through this area, so we're not going to get to see it. And that's where the nerdy kid says, hey, yeah, we're not going to get to see it when it's open, but this is our youth. We're supposed to go out and make memories and have fun and do something with our lives. Let's sneak into the dark ride on our own, and we'll spend the night there, and we'll get to experience it. It'll be a new memory, and plus we don't have to pay for a hotel. And they all agree to do it. Now, one thing I think other people have pointed out with this movie is the dark ride is in New Jersey, and they're going to New Orleans. There's very few places where New Jersey is on the way to New Orleans, and even fewer where, like, they get there at night. It's a whole day's ride away from New Jersey. The movie is a little geographically confused, I think people have said, and I think other people have broken it down a lot more where the map doesn't really make sense in this movie, but whatever, we're moving on. They eventually get there, they wait for the security guard to leave, and they all start to break in, except for the final girl who says, I'll spend the night in the van. So everybody but her, they get in, and the jock guy has to, like, climb through a window. He turns the power on and lets them in, so all the mannequins are moving around and getting their scares ready, and they explore the whole place. And there's a whole bunch of little sets, mannequins doing different things, various horror tropes. Lots of fun to be had, but they stumble across a Halloween scene. 2 kids by the front door, candy bags in hand, and a scary monster popping up in the window. One of the kids goes to mess with the mannequin and finds that the young boy in this scene has his face ripped off. What happened to that? Well, eventually they start to settle down for the night, and they start to tell the legend about this place, which it turns out a few of them knew the legend, but they weren't talking because they wanted the whole party to attend. And they start to tell the legend about how the kids were killed in the beginning and the killer's in an asylum, and they of course start to get creeped out. And we know from a scene that took place a little earlier that the killer is actually out of the asylum. You see, you get, he's there, and he's in his straitjacket, and of course you get 2 bad orderlies that start to mess with him, and you never want to do that in a horror movie, because he rips through his straitjacket and attacks them, which, yeah, ripping through the straitjacket, that's not really a clever way of writing how to get out of a straitjacket, but it does show he's very, very strong, and that will come up later. But you actually do get a really good kill with one of the orderlies, where he's holding a flashlight, and the killer rips it out of his hand and punches through him, and then in turn the flashlight is covered in blood and shines a red light onto the other orderly who is just scared out of his mind. Okay, that's a pretty fun, goofy, cheesy kill. But anyway, from there, we do get the killer chasing them around. Eventually, they'll start to know they're in a horror movie. You get to that 3rd act climax, everything's happening, people are getting picked off, and it does get fun, Before we get to the 3rd act, there's enough sense of we're exploring somewhere we're not supposed to be. It's a really interesting location, and the drama with the kids is interesting enough. You know, who's interested in who's mad at who, and they also do have a sense of jokes and levity that, you know, even though the first hour it's not super scary, it's not big slasher stuff, it doesn't feel like it drags, you know? So we eventually get to that third act. Really fun, crazy, over-the-top, cheesy slasher stuff. And I really did like it. I can see why this movie kind of has a cult following. It's just dumb fun, you know? Don't expect too much from it. Don't expect anything super new. It's not the best slasher in the world. But for a cheesy afternoon, want to sit down, watch a cheesy slasher movie, I definitely say for the right crowd of slasher geeks, horror movie geeks, there is a lot to like here. You know, it's not going to win someone over who's not a slasher fan, but if you love slashers, it's a pretty fun watch. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my slasher movies playlist where you can see me talk about a ton of slasher movies. Classic 80s slashers like Friday the 13th, proto-slashers like Mario Bava's Bay of Blood, all the way up to new slashers. I just recently talked about X, so there is a ton of movies in this playlist, or a ton of me reviewing movies in that playlist. If you want to see me talk about more, click right there and see more. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.